When my husband and I had decided we were going to take a leap of faith and homeschool our oldest son, I remember feeling completely overwhelmed that first big task that loomed in front of me. What exactly was I going to teach my son? What would we do all day? How would I know what to teach and make sure that I didn't leave anything out? There was a lot of anxiety on my part because what if I got it wrong and screwed up this whole thing from the beginning? I actually get this question a lot because I think a lot of moms feel the same anxiety over choosing homeschool curriculum or piecing together learning materials for their kids. I started homeschooling 7 years ago, and the number of available resources and curriculum has only increased over the years, and it has gotten very overwhelming. So I can totally relate to this sentiment, but it doesn't have to be this way. And 7 years in, I want to tell you that it does get easier. It does. If you're new to homeschooling though, I want to share some tips with you to help you in your curriculum choosing process and offer some encouragement along the way. So here's something you need to know before we get into the meat of this. There is no perfect curriculum out there. There's just not. You can relax right now knowing that there are many wonderful options out there and probably multiple curriculums that would work just fine for your family. So many times I see moms get stuck in indecision, worried they're gonna make the wrong choice, worried that they aren't going to pick out the right curriculum for their kids. Or they choose something, but then hear a friend mention or suggest something else, and then they start second guessing themselves. Look, I think it's perfectly fine to want to have the best for your kids and want to have the best curriculum out there. But sometimes you don't know what you are gonna need or what's gonna work best for you until you're actually using it, until you're actually teaching your kids with that curriculum. So you simply have to make a decision based on an educated choice and own it. And the beautiful thing is that the more you learn about your kids and the more you learn about yourself as a homeschool mom, you will become better equipped and more comfortable making decisions on what resources to use. And that so-called perfect curriculum might not be perfect the next year, or it might work for one kid but not the other. So cut yourself some slack, give yourself some grace, and know that you can do this because God made you the mom and the primary educator of your children. And if He thinks that you're cut out for that role, you should think that too. So no perfect curriculum, we've got that down. But we still have to make a decision, right? And with all the choices out there, where should we start? The first place you need to start is with your state laws. If you aren't sure where to find your state homeschooling requirements, I'll leave some links in the description for you. HSLDA is an excellent resource, and I also have a Homeschooling in 50 States series on my website that is filled with information for each state. Some states are more strict on what they require from homeschooling families, but some are more lenient. Once you know what is required of you, it will help give you a framework from which to start building your curriculum and making your decisions. My next tip is to see if you can attend a homeschool convention. I know it's not always possible to attend a convention in person, but if you can, I highly recommend it. Online conventions are fine, but just not the same. Just like going to church online isn't quite the same, right? There's something about being present with our community, being inspired by the speakers, and getting to touch and feel and flip through the curriculum that you're interested in. And if you can, go to a Christian homeschooling convention. Look up Teach Them Diligently. I'll link them in the description as well, but you guys, I can't recommend this convention enough. Josh and I have been going every year since we began homeschooling. This is going to be our 8th year attending. It is refreshing, energizing, and so encouraging. They've grown and have a couple different locations now. You can bring your kids. They have a great kids program, although we typically leave our kids with family and use this as a little trip away to kind of recharge. It was at our first convention that I really began forming my vision for homeschooling, understanding what this was going to look like for us, and realizing how big and important this really is. It was honestly life-changing. So anyway, there's my plug. Try to get to a convention. I think that being able to browse and flip through different curriculums, talk to publishers, and talk to other moms in person can be very helpful in your decision-making process. Okay, my next tip, whether or not you go to a convention, you've researched your state laws. Now you need to think about what kind of worldview you want presented in your teaching. Do you want a curriculum that teaches through the lens of the Bible, that helps your kids love God more and know Him better through your homeschooling? When you make this distinction, it can actually help narrow down your curriculum search a lot. For example, if you want to teach from a biblical worldview, you're probably going to begin searching for Christian curriculums. But from there, taking a closer look at what they are actually teaching, how they're teaching it, and if it lines up with your values and beliefs, and the values you want to teach your kids. I think this is one of the most important things we can consider as Christian parents when we're choosing curriculum. My big wake-up call in this area was when I read the book Homeschooling from a Biblical Worldview by Israel Wayne. It completely changed the way that I thought about teaching, as it stressed that every subject can and should be taught from a biblical worldview, and that the purpose of our education is to grow closer to God. I realized that I didn't just want to teach my kids about God in the Bible, but that we could use the subjects we studied as a vehicle to learn more about God and His character. For example, why do we teach history? My answer had always been that we teach history so our kids can learn where we came from, learn about different people and cultures, learn from past mistakes, and prepare for the future. This is what I learned growing up in a government school system. Now, those aren't terrible reasons, but they kind of leave out the most important thing that influences our past, present, and future, our Heavenly Father. We should approach and teach history, in my opinion, from the standpoint that we are learning God's history, how history was influenced by obedience and disobedience to His word, how God moved and influenced all events, and what we can learn about His nature when we study different historical events. That is going to give me a completely different viewpoint when I go to choose a history curriculum. Okay, so we've got know your state laws, visit a convention, understand the worldview you want to teach from. Next tip is maybe a little bit different than what you usually hear, but here we go. Typically, you'll have people tell you you need to figure out your child's learning style and your homeschool style before you pick your curriculum. You need to put yourself in a box. So are you a classical homeschooler, an unschooler, Charlotte Mason, traditional, etc.? And are your kids hands-on learners, visual or auditory learners? Okay, well, I never fit into any of those boxes perfectly, and my kids have multiple different ways that they like to learn. And you know what? I didn't really figure it out until I actually started teaching them. So my advice to you is to simply pick something that you like. Pick a curriculum that you like to teach. Pick something that you will look forward to doing every day, because you're going to be doing it every day. Now, within this, you are obviously going to have to take budget into consideration, along with any lifestyle needs, such as if you are a working parent and need your kids to be able to have something to work on more independently or something like that. But in general, as a homeschooling parent, you need to find a curriculum that makes sense to you, that you are comfortable teaching your kids. Do you want to be hands-on all day, every day? Or do you want to outsource some work or join a co-op? Would you prefer a box curriculum where it's all prepped, planned, and laid out for you? Or do you enjoy picking and choosing and pulling your resources together? When I first started researching and learning about homeschooling, a friend invited me to come check out a local classical conversations meeting. I loved learning about this program, and it was just the beginning of what I was discovering about the world of homeschool co-ops, university model schools, and all those types of things. But I wasn't 100% sold on classical conversations for our first year. It didn't feel right for how I wanted to teach and run our homeschool. While I was there though, a friend told me about My Father's World, and once I learned more about this curriculum, I was sold. My first year homeschooling, and I could just buy an entire curriculum, open the plans, and follow a schedule, and it had a biblical worldview. Sign me up. I knew that I would get overwhelmed trying to piece everything together. And if I was stressed and worried, no one was going to have fun doing this homeschooling thing. I wanted structure. I wanted to feel like I had all the right pieces of the puzzle. And I was happy to have found a curriculum that I could trust, even though there was always a lot of negative talk I would hear about boxed curriculums. I didn't know much about my kids' learning styles. They were in kindergarten and preschool. I had no idea what kind of homeschool teacher I would be, but I knew what I wanted to teach, and I found a curriculum that looked like I could teach it, and I made that decision. So find a curriculum that plays to your strengths as an educator. It's okay if you don't know your style or don't know if it will 100% work for your kids. Obviously, there might be some exceptions if you really do know those things and need to be more strategic. But in order to ensure the best experience for yourself and your children, you have to be comfortable. But there is a but. But make sure that you are flexible and realize that this is a learning process and you may or may not decide to make changes as you go. And you are allowed to do that. Try a homeschooling curriculum you like and see how it goes. If it doesn't work, try another until you find a fit for your family. This may take some trial and error, and that's okay. Your curriculum can and probably will evolve many times over the years. Don't feel like you have to be stuck with whatever you chose right off the bat, unless you want to be. I was asked recently what this looked like for us. When did I start putting curriculum together for my kids and take them off a boxed or all-in-one curriculum? The truth is, a boxed curriculum has always been kind of my go-to because I'm comfortable with it and I have loved the curriculums we've used. We used My Father's World for kindergarten through second grade for my oldest, and then when he was in third through fifth grade, we used BJU Press, and we used their entire grade level package. So I would budget for and purchase the entire grade level for my kids. And I didn't necessarily take them off of that all-in-one curriculum, but when I noticed they needed extra help in a certain area, like math and spelling, we made adjustments from there. The last year using BJU Press, we ended up switching to different spelling and math programs because I was noticing my kids needed something a little bit different at that point. And if they hadn't, we'd still be using the same thing most likely. Well, I take that back because the next year we did switch back to My Father's World because I missed it. And since my youngest son was getting older, I wanted us to get back to doing more school together and having my kids do less of their lessons online. With using the BJU Press Distance Learning Online, they had a lot of work on their computers. So I made the decision to switch. My Father's World was a curriculum that I liked and felt fit my teaching style and what I valued for our family and our homeschool. Again, so we kind of used the boxed curriculum as the spine, and I added and changed some things as we went along. This year, I had to add in math and language arts curriculum because that's not included in many of the all-in-one boxed curriculums at this level because these two subjects typically need to be individualized even if you are teaching multiple children at the same time because they will likely be at different levels in math and reading. So as your kids get older, you are looking at needing to make those choices regardless of whether or not you use a boxed curriculum. Anything else I've added in, so Latin, art, typing, those are the main ones I think, are because either I wanted to, as with Latin and typing, or because my kids requested it, as with art. It wasn't something that I really stressed out about. I planned our main curriculum, and when those needs arose, we simply added them in. So honestly, you guys, those are my big tips and takeaways when you are making curriculum decisions. If you are not at all like me and know that you don't want to use a boxed curriculum, then I still recommend knowing your state laws, figuring out your worldview and your approach, and from there, make a list of subjects that you want or need to cover. Decide if you are going to teach your kids together or separately, pick a curriculum you like, and give yourself grace and allow yourself to be flexible. I can't tell you which classes you need to teach because that's going to look different for literally everyone. But you're going to need to pick out math and language arts curriculum for each of your kids. For history and science and everything else, decide what you are going to teach your kids together if you have multiple kids, or what you want to do for each kid separately. From there, decide if you want a teacher-led curriculum or if your child is going to work independently. And each decision you make, you narrow down those choices until you have your decision. You are homeschooling your kids. You do not have to box them into a grade level or any type of standard that you've been conditioned to think your kids need to fit into. I think looking at curriculum by grade levels can be a helpful place to start. But remember that grade levels are not as important when you're homeschooling. My kids barely even know what grade they're in half the time when people ask them that question because it's just not important. Use a curriculum's placement test when they're available. They'll usually give you a good idea where to start your kids using that curriculum. You get to create that unique learning path for your kids though. And here's the deal. Here's how you deal with anxiety and overwhelm about curriculum choices. First, you've got to release that anxiety to the Lord. Choose to surrender your overwhelming thoughts to Him and not let them defeat you. This takes practice. You've got to practice taking every thought captive and live by His power, making Him your partner in homeschooling. That means you need to be in His Word daily and stay prayerful, trusting in His will for you and your kids. You can think that perfect curriculum is out there and will solve all your homeschooling problems, that everything will be perfect if you simply find the right curriculum, but that's simply not true. The only thing that can give you the perfect piece that you are searching for in your homeschooling is a person Jesus Christ, and you won't find that true peace in any worldly option you seek out. Secondly, remember that when you homeschool, you have such a great opportunity to give your kids a love of learning. Yes, there are going to be some subjects or things that they don't like and that they have to do anyway, but as they get older, get their input into the kind of things that they like to do, what they want to learn about, and that helps make learning fun for them. I used to be worried that I wouldn't cover everything that I needed to in homeschooling, that I would miss something and completely mess up my kids. But the fact of the matter is, you don't have to cover everything. You can't possibly cover everything. The thought that there are right things to teach at certain times is subjective. There is no one size fits all. When you teach your kids how to learn, teach them that they can learn, and teach them how to love learning, then they are golden. They have a wealth of information at their fingertips these days and can learn anything they might need to know at that point. So if you are stressing about forgetting to cover something or missing something, stop. You are going to forget things. You are not going to cover everything. Remember that you don't want to simply drill ideas into your kids' heads. How much do you remember from your own schooling if you were taught that way? I know there is so much that I've forgotten that I once crammed into my brain to be able to pass tests. You don't have to teach this way. Teach a love of learning to your kids, and throughout life, they will be able to learn what they need when they need to learn it. Finally, make the decision that you are going to not feel guilty if you make a curriculum decision that is different from someone else. Make the decision that it's okay to watch a video about a new curriculum and like it and think, wow, that looks really great, and then move on. Don't get caught up thinking that you have to try every new shiny thing. If you need to make changes, make changes. But because it seems like everyone else is doing something different doesn't mean you have to too, or that you have to feel guilty about what you are doing, or that you need to feel like you are missing out on something. Be okay with cheering on friends, learning about different things out there in case you ever need to use them, but be confident in the choices that you do end up making. Okay guys, was that helpful? I don't know. I feel like some of it is not your typical curriculum choosing advice, so let me know in the comments what you think, or if you have any questions, I want to hear them. I am simply one voice, one mom with homeschooling experiences that may differ from yours, but this is how I've chosen curriculum in the past and some of the things that have helped me. So I hope it was helpful for you too. Hit that like button, give this video a thumbs up if it was helpful, and if you are not subscribed already and would like to do that, I would love to have you stick around here in my little space on YouTube. As always, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.